Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.
Okay, here we go. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Look, Mum, I'm Failing, powered by Song Division, the podcast that brings together a seemingly unexpected duo, full-time professional artist and a business owner or industry leader in the search of common themes and ways to endure and maybe even enjoy the process of failure. I'm your host, Sam McNeil, General Manager at Song Division, host, facilitator, singer, songwriter, professional shoulder rider, communicator, collaborator, innovator, all the aiders. Hot off the press too, nominee for M&IT's Personality of the Year.
Yes.
I've got two incredible humans joining me on the show this week. Shonali Devereaux is a meetings and events industry legend. She's the current CEO of the Meetings Industry Association, which is the longest running association of its kind in the UK. She's also an in-demand speaker, facilitator, mentor, and just one of the kindest people you'd ever be lucky enough to meet. Damien Leith is a singer, songwriter, actor, TV personality and radio personality and an author who's been doing his thing around the world for 40 years or so. Born in Ireland, now calls Australia home, as he bloody well should, because he won Australian Idol back in 2006. Since then, he's had number one singles, albums, toured his own music and the music of legends like Roy Orbison, written novels, children's books, and even a cabaret show. Oh, I need a lie down. Damien, Shonali, how are you? Thank you both for joining us.
Oh, good, thank you for having us. I feel like I need a lie down after that intro. How accomplished are we? That's amazing.
That's the end of the show. That's all we've got time for.
That's it.
No, let's dive in, Shonali. We were just joking about this because it's a little bit hard to find some information about you and the early years online. But take us back to growing up, Hong Kong, your work there in various hotels and hospitality, and I guess that gap between when did you decide that you wanted to work in events or hospitality, and what that journey from then to actually making a career out of it looked like in the early stages?
Oh, you see, this is a litany of failures already to start with, so I love it. It's going to be perfect for your podcast. So I always say that it was inside me and built into my personality from a very young age. My mum had narcissistic personality disorder, and hers manifested in her wanting to be brilliant at everything, right? Which is just the antithesis of learning how to fail as a child. And her narcissism manifested in her being president of the Goan Association and head of the Toastmasters Society. And, she had all these, head of the bowling club and all these things that she did. So she needed somebody to run behind her and poopy scoop all the time. And that ended up being me, because there's a huge age gap between me and my older sisters. So this idea of being an organizer just was absolutely inherent in my personality. Now, Sam, you know me on the other side of the therapy, and you know that I'm very much front of house, and front of house was something I was never allowed to be as a child. So innately, it was just built into my personality to organise and do all sorts of things. Fast forward to work experience at the age 16, and I got work experience in an architecture firm. And I was underneath a project manager, and I thought there was absolutely nothing better than seeing these designs come into something physical that people could use. And I thought that's what I really, really wanted to do. One of my first spectacular failures was applying for architecture at university and sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 drawing and realising I want to be out there. I want to be doing the thing. I don't want to be I love drawing, but, I just don't want to be doing that, and I don't want to go through 7 years to be designing how high the toilet roll holder is going to be just above the thing in a building before somebody decides I might be a project manager. So I quit. Failure number one, quit uni, and then came out to Hong Kong to work, which is where I was born, and did the usual thing that everybody does. I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. Damien, please don't break my singing.
Nice, I like it. Good reference.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. And also teaching aerobics and personal training. And Sam, you know this about my personality. I can't just do something. So I started in the gym and then ended up teaching aerobics and personal training because I was dissatisfied satisfied with the classes, perfectionist much. And then as the waitress in the cocktail bar, I noticed they had monthly themed events and they had stopped. And I asked why. And they said, well, we don't have a marketing and PR manager. So I pitched to do that. And that's where it all started, running monthly themed events in the bar. Then I got hired by hotels to do that. Then I worked on the Philippine Centennial Expo, and I couldn't see that through to fruition because that handover happened. Came to England, landed with Vanessa Cotton in the events organisation company, and the love of working on mega events began. It was a rocky road, but I've taken up too much time.
I like it.
Damien's story.
No, that's
that was the origin story.
Well summarised, because I know, you're a bit like me. You like to, architecture. It's amazing, but you want to see the idea come to life, which is what we get to do in events from the planning stage. That there's always an end date where all the hard work comes to fruition, which is my favourite thing about it as well. Damien, same question. County Kildare.
County Kildare, yeah.
Kildare, yeah. Not far from where my family from. Well, not too far, relatively. County Antrim. And I have done some stalking of you. I'm dying to know about Leith or Relief, the family band.
I know.
Tell us about that. Sounds like you had some success in the US as well. And when... I mean, it sounds like it's been from day dot that music's been in the blood and in the family and performing. So, what did that look like, and when did you start then professionally making a money or a living out of it?
Well, you know what? I mean, I suppose it was in our family as well. It was a similar sort of thing. My parents always loved music. My dad played guitar. My mother sung. And we traveled a lot. We lived in Africa for about 13 years, traveling around from Libya down to Botswana to South Africa. And music kind of came with us throughout all that journey, because we were living in remote places that there was no TV, there was no radio, but there was a guitar. It was Dad's guitar, and we would sit down and songs were a common thing. But weirdly enough, I didn't sing until I was 17. I'd never sung. I loved writing. Wow. Writing was my passion. I wrote plays. I loved acting, but I hadn't sung until I was 17. I had just come back from South Africa, started in a new school. The school happened to do musicals, and I thought, okay, well, I'll give a musical a go. And I got the role of Fagin in Oliver, and it was overnight. I became obsessed with music. It was one of those sort of things where I suddenly got this feeling when I stepped on stage, and I thought, wow, I like this. This is great. Maybe this is what I've been missing for a long, long time. And I became totally obsessed with it. My two brothers, my sister, and myself, we created a band, a family band called Leith, Leaf. And we toured all over Ireland while we all went to uni. So I'm a chemist by trade. So I
saw that.
Yeah. So I studied chemistry. I even went on to do a master's and everything. But it was it was weird. My love was always music. But I come from a family where, that academic side is still very, very important. Mom and Dad always instilled that in us. And I tell you, I do the same for my own kids as well. Because really, it saw me through 10 long years where I thought I was going to make it and I didn't make it, including heading over to America with the family band. We got a record deal over there when we were quite young, and it didn't work out. So we all went back to Ireland with our tails between our legs, and we were like, oh, no, this is a disaster. And we broke up, and then we started back up again. We called ourselves Relief. We thought, geez, this is the rehashed version of Leaf. I know, for a want of a title. But I just stuck at it. I always loved it. And I came up to Australia, and when I was 30, and two friends convinced me to audition for Australian Idol. And I literally left their side in Bondi, went into the city and auditioned, and that was it. And then I went on to win it. So it was. And
the rest is history, and we'll dive into that. So Shonali, I know you sort of gave us the very lovely snapshot there, but I've noticed, especially through your LinkedIn, you've had a variety of roles, but a lot of them have had a lot of purpose. I actually didn't know you were involved in meeting needs way back in, was it 2014? I think it said.
I was their first director of development.
Which is amazing. Damien, Meeting Needs is an industry charity or foundation that raises money at meetings and events and gives them to dozens of small charities throughout the year. And it's kind of how well, we knew each other, but that probably forged our friendship, and it's how I met my wife, who's also a close friend of Shonali's. But I also noticed you worked with, is it the Heart Foundation, British Heart Foundation?
British Heart Foundation, yeah. I was their head of events for a while.
And has that always been something where you've taken on roles where it's not just about your personal passion or the paycheck, that there needs to be a purpose behind what you're doing? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
I mean, my current role is exactly the same. You know, my role at the moment is to help the meetings industry be as best as it can be in the UK through guidance, support and advocacy. And it feels incredibly purpose driven. And I guess that is really, really what drives me. There is always a bit of attention in my work. When you organise events, it's very client driven. It's very, you know, you're working towards a thing that is temporary. It happens and then it goes. And while all the people come together and they're either educated or inspired, or they go off doing something different, and that is brilliant to see, there's no tangible legacy left in your soul about what you've done. And I think it's partly as well because, you know, Mum did all of these things outside of work and it very much made her person. For me, it was always just inherent to do things outside work. So even when I was just organising events, even when I was just working on events, there was always something outside. So, for example, I've been on the council for Cheltenham Ladies College. I've worked on the board for Pride in Brighton and Hove. I've volunteered for the Tourism Alliance. I've helped set up Iron Tide CIC. I've been in you know, like worked in charities. I feel like there's always got to be that yin and yang. But if you can't get purpose in your work, I try and find it outside. At the moment, it's very much a vocational work that I do, but that also comes with its emotional toil. So I haven't quite found the balance between, is it good to be paid for your purpose, or is it like, should you just leave your purpose there and just get paid to live? And, you know, I haven't quite found that yet, but I seem to go for a purpose-driven job.
That's a really great question, actually, Damien. You could probably speak to that. I've always wanted to find a way to make a living out of what I love, but I've always also looked at people who go, oh, they just do their job 9 to 5 and that's their job, and then they go home and forget about it. And sometimes I'm a bit jealous of that, but then I'm not sure that would be for me. Damien, what your thoughts?
I think it's very, you know, every person's different. Some people, that is exactly what they want, you know, and I have friends who are exactly like that, and they're the happiest people on the planet, you know, but, you know, I know I'm not that sort of person. I have to be doing something that I'm really passionate about, something that inspires me. I've done the long shifts in pharmaceutical companies and things like that. So I know the difference when you're doing something that you don't particularly like versus when you're doing something that you do love. And yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act, because obviously once you go down the route of trying to make a living from the thing that you love, you know, invariably you're going to end up making some major sacrifices, because it's never as easy as you'd love it to be. We'd all love it in theory to get into you know, our passion, and it suddenly makes us lots and lots of money and we're all living happily, but it really generally isn't that way at all. And yeah, you got to work with it. You got to really kind of pick it apart and find ways to make it work for you.
Yeah, and I think
events one of the hardest things.
Go, Shonali. Yeah.
Sorry, Sam.
No, you go.
I was going to say, I think one of the hardest things, you know, when you talk about lots of people are still trying to find their purpose at whatever age it is. And so when you think you want to work within your purpose, not everybody understands what their passion is from the start. And, you know, there's an infinite number of gurus out there trying to help people, also trying to make money on their own by helping people find that thing that they're passionate about so they can live within their ikigai, you know, that lovely intersection. You've heard of ikigai, yes?
That's the intersection of what you
love, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, and what you're good at. Yeah,
and events and music. But you know, Shonali, I'm sure you'd agree when people say, "Oh, I love working at events," and it's like, you better love it. If you don't love it, you're in the wrong job. It's not a job. It's not an industry you can be in if you don't absolutely love it, because it will kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same for music. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, my
Performing,
partner's a musician. Performing,
yeah, we'll get to that.
Driving those long hours to do the gig for what turns out to be 30 people or you know, in a care home or whatever it is, and you've really got to love it.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting what you say there about people not knowing their passion. What I find as well, I've got kids I've got a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 15-year-old, and everybody's constantly talking about what are they going to be? Who are they going to be? You know, and I do look at them now, and I think back to when I was that age, and I really had no clue whatsoever. And there was a lot of pressure out there for people to figure out what it is that they really love, or what it is that's going to make them happy in 20 years, 30 years time. It's probably the biggest question. I think a lot of people fall into things that they never really wanted to do. Some of them enjoy it, and then some other people look back and go, wow, I wasted 30 years of my life because I just fell into this thing. So it's a very hard thing to find, the thing that you love doing.
Yes. There is a podcast episode out at the moment, Shonali, and it's with the guys from The Power of Events, and he talks about that, saying it's too many people saying they fell into events. Like it's not something you should necessarily you want to just fall into. It should be something you're really passionate about. But this is coming from someone who I think from a very early age definitely knew that what I wanted to do, and I feel lucky that I had that. You know, sort of I
love that you've had that. I mean. Really, for me, the advice, and Damien, to your children, anything, is like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you 100%. Can only do what's right in front of you. You can only take that first step of the ladder. Who cares who you're going to be in 20, 30 years' time? If I thought I was going to be, I don't think I could have envisaged that I would be this person in 30 years' time. I think my vision, my 18-year-old vision for my 51-year-old self was completely different. Not completely different. You know, some of the things are ringing true, but just quite different. And you evolve as a person over that time. So you can't make those decisions. You just have to make a decision about what you're passionate about right now in the moment. And that will lead you on a path, step by step, to where you ultimately, where your joy is.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love it. Okay, so jumping around, Damien, you again, this is what the internet tells me. You had a world trip planned, but was it stop one was Australia, and you ended up staying there. Was that with your partner at the time, or she was back in Ireland?
No, so I met my wife in Ireland. So she's half Irish, half Tongan. And I met her in Ireland. She was visiting her grandparents. So I did everything to woo her, to win her over. And when that didn't fail, I just persisted. And eventually I won her over. And a couple of years later, we got married. It was a round the world trip. We packed up everything. And by the time we got to Australia, we were broke. We had spent every single penny we were owed to, which wasn't much. We didn't have much money. And we arrived into Australia and we needed a job. Thankfully for me, and this was the first time where I certainly didn't regret having the chemistry degree, I got a job straight away. There's always a need for chemists out there. And immediately then I got settled into Australia. It still wasn't the intention to stay here, you know, but then my wife, Eileen, who's actually also involved in events, she got a role with Bernardo's, the children's charity. So so before we knew it, you know, 2 years had passed and we're still here. And then suddenly kids have arrived and then 23 years later, still here.
Yeah.
Love that.
And no regrets. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. And so kids are in the picture in 2006 when you're sort of, it sounds like almost sort of talked into auditioning.
I was talked into it, 100%. It was, so we had our first son, Jarvis, at that stage. He was about 8 months old. I was the QA manager for a pharmaceutical company.
Are you allowed to say which one out of interest?
I can. Yeah. So it's called, at the time it was called Pharma Lab. It's since changed its name to Febra, and they were a great company. Really, it was actually probably the best job I'd ever had in the chemistry industry to date. So I was probably the most settled I ever was. Things were kind of ticking along nicely.
Yeah.
And it was probably the one time where I thought, you know, I had been chasing music and chasing record companies and radio stations for at that stage, 13 years, you know, desperately trying to crack it through, and it just wasn't working. And I actually thought, you know, this isn't meant for me. And it was in that moment when I didn't necessarily want it, that's when it happened. So it's...
Isn't that interesting?
You know, they all say when, if you're too needy or if you're too, I don't know, people feel it from you, and it just doesn't seem to work. The one time I was at ease and I was at peace with myself. It all worked. It was great.
It all worked. Yeah. Oh,
I'm sure somebody must have researched this, because it happens all the time, doesn't it? That moment where you just think, oh, I'm going to start putting in the work. I put in tons of work, but then at the moment you go, I'm done with the work. Something really miraculous appears, and you're completely fine. You're settled in the thing that you were doing before, and it's at that moment that the thing that you really wanted happens. It's so bizarre.
It is, and it's
very weird.
Especially with music. And part of the reason I wanted to make this podcast is that where you are expected to grind and hustle and annoy labels and A&R guys back in the day when you actually would, bring them CDs or print them off yourself or whatever. And it's freaking exhausting. And it's no after no after no. But they say, but the guys who make it are the ones when the label says, you just kept annoying me that we gave you a chance. And it's like, that's not super inspiring for me.
It's not inspiring, and it's not your typical story either. They kind of paint this picture that that's how it is, but it really isn't. I remember having envelopes with tons and tons of demos that I was sending all over the world and chasing after a DJ on Grafton Street in Dublin because I saw him coming around the corner and I happened to have a cassette of one of my songs, chasing after him, asking him desperately to play it, and that was the thrill for the next 2 weeks that he might actually play the song. I'd finally got in front. He didn't play the song. I listened every day and it never got played. But when you think at the time, you're kind of naive as well. You're just driven by. Well, half the time you don't. You're just driven by passion. The whole industry requires passion, and I suppose it thrives off people's passion. That's what keeps it alive.
Yeah, and Shonali, you know what we do at Song Division. Damien, I'm not sure if I've ever explained what we do at Song Division, but it was a real moment for me where I probably realised I wasn't going to continue hustling and grafting as an original singer-songwriter in my band Dream Delay and as a solo singer-songwriter when I did my first job with Song Division, which was with Microsoft, Damien, where we get groups of corporates. There's lots of pharmaceutical companies. Actually, we teach them to write original songs about their company values, their value. So team bonding through songwriting. And it was that moment when I fell in love with the company and saw, wow, there's an opportunity here to make money and a career and living out of what I wanted to do, which was be on stage and make people happy. In my head, I thought that would be touring the world in an originals band, and that's not what it has turned out to be. But at the end of the day, that was in the details. It was just, will I get paid to travel around the world and make people happy? And that was that sense of relief. Like, okay, I can still have this dream, not necessarily the way I thought it would come about.
But you're still doing it.
Amazing. What you do is amazing, and you're still doing it, and you're a huge success in it, and you are shortlisted for MIT Personality of the Year, which, Damien, is one of it is our industry's most prestigious individual award. So Sam should be incredibly proud of that. I mean, speaking to what you were saying, like both of you, I mean, there's so many themes emerging here, but Damien and Sam, it is that thing where we glamorize the hustle, but the hustle is actually a necessary part. Like the success, those stories of naught to success don't happen. These people have been trying and being in people's faces and doing the thing and mastering their craft over years and years and years before it becomes the thing. Yeah. But I wanted to speak to Sam, you sort of talking about how what you found wasn't what you envisaged, but it was a distillation of a few core things within that could be interpreted into this new role, but make you money. But also that thing you were saying about the power of events, you have to have that seed of inspiration. You have to be able to say, and this is where events are brilliant, because I always say you can be anybody you want to be in events. We've got people who do the books, we've got people who do the project management, we've got people who do the client management, we've got people who do the marketing, whatever it might be. And it's just sowing that seed, saying, look, this is the brilliant thing you've created, and you can play any part in this that you want, depending on what your personal interest is, and that's who you can be. So I think it's really important to find the things you love doing on a day-to-day basis, and how do I replicate that, and not necessarily think, I have to be a blah and give it a title, but what is it that I'm doing day to day that I could interpret into what I can make into a living?
Exactly, and it's a really supportive community, at least from my memory in Australia and definitely in the UK and Europe. And there is a place for everyone. I really love that. You're right. It's such an ecosystem. Whether you want it, whether you're into event law or like you said, the marketing, the sales side, the AV, the venues. It's beautiful. It's a health and safety and compliance. And there's something for everyone. You don't just need to want to be on a stage to work in events, which is very, very cool. Speaking of overnight successes after 10, 20, 30 years of hard work, so how quick was that, Damien? And did you think, I guess as an Irish person, that you'd even do well in Australian Idol?
I've come over as a temporary resident and win Australian Idol. People still talk about the overnight success because it comes up quite a bit. People say, "Oh wow, so you had never sung a note before you went on Idol?" And I was, for one thing, I think I was the oldest contestant at that stage anywhere in the world on one of those shows. I think I was. So I was 30, and I had tried everything. Honestly,
oh my God, ancient!
30.
I was ancient, and people used to, that whole idea that I was 30 and I was old, and really it was funny, because I didn't think I was old at 30. My goodness,
No.
But I looked at the other contestants, and I had 15-year-old and 16-year-olds in the house with me, so I really was, the old guy, but. Yeah, but it had taken 13 years to get to that point. And it had taken a lot of knocks and falls. Like I mentioned before, we had a record deal that didn't work out for us and broke our hearts, to be honest, because we thought this was it. And when it didn't turn out to be that, it was a tough thing for the family band to kind of, deal with. But it was, I don't regret the journey getting to that point because I learned so much about myself, how I write, how I perform. I think of, Damien of the 18-year-old versus Damien of the, 30-year-old. And that 18-year-old, he wasn't a patch on the 30-year-old. And he would never have survived. The 18-year-old, I wasn't in the right mental state to survive in an industry as, I was going to say ruthless, but as brutal. It is a very hard industry, and I think the fact that I had been there for a while helped an awful lot.
Yeah, and like we said before we went live, taking out that top spot over Jessica Malboy, who's still, as far as I'm aware, very relevant and massive in Australia and an incredible performer. And
she's amazing. We're really good friends. She was 15 on the show, so I'm 30. She's 15.
Wow.
Yeah, so she was very, very young. She had her 16th birthday as we led up to the grand final, and I remember looking at her, and thinking, "Gee, wow, she was young. She really and truly was." And it was weird, I never thought I was going to win. Never thought, but I did win. And then the way the journey went from there, I went my direction. Jess, who had already made a really great name for herself, had gone her direction as well, which involved a gradual build.
Yes.
The record companies worked with her and set her up in different areas. And I think it was probably the best thing that ever happened. In many ways, it was meant to go this way because I was that bit older, it worked for me, and it certainly worked for her as well.
Yeah, and I've had a friend of mine called Mig Iessa on, who I don't know if you know, Damien.
I know Mig. Yeah.
Mig, and he came second or third in the In Excess frontman search for the frontman, and we talked about that. The pros and cons of winning something like that and coming second or third, that you don't have the potential pressure of the label deal that you win, I guess, when you win the show, and a lot of expectation and pressure and demands. A lot of them have gone on to do quite well. Matt Corby, who's then been able to transition from that reality show into the more indie Triple J world very quickly. Yeah, what your thoughts on that? Did you think, if I don't win it, I might have a better shot at doing my own thing, or were you pretty happy with the result either way?
Oh, look, I was happy with the result, but it was never, when my friends kind of encouraged me to go for it, my only goal was to try and generate enough interest so that I could get other gigs as a result of it. That's all I was aiming to do, because I had the full-time job. We had just had our first child, And I was gigging at the weekend, so I was doing little solo gigs, things like that. And I just figured, you know what, it'd be great for the family, our growing family, to have a little bit more income coming in. So that was all I ever thought. I thought, if this could give me a little bit of exposure, I'll get more gigs, and that'll be good for the whole family. So it was never the intention. But I do think, there are, pitfalls about winning it as well. You get associated directly with what you did on that show. So once you're thrust out of the show and into your first recording or album or whatever it is, that audience that followed you the whole way along want that sound. And sometimes those shows present you in a different light to exactly who you are, because it's all themed based, a disco number or a big band number. But quite a lot of us don't necessarily do those sort of things. We do it for the show. But, suddenly you get bound to these particular styles, and that can be a horrible thing. It worked out all right for me, but I know a lot of people who really struggled. They got associated with a certain sound that they actually didn't particularly like. And then they were stuck with it forevermore. So,
that's interesting because someone who I've got a lot of respect for and I knew loosely years ago who won The Voice. Her name's Anya Nissen, and I'd love to get her on the show. So I feel she was a stand and deliver diva singer in the good way, like amazing. Aretha Franklin, and she won, and from what I know was signed to will.i.am's label because he was a judge, and he really pushed her down this sort of dance electronic disco stuff, and it just wasn't her voice, and she's still a professional performer, but I wonder how
it's a very difficult thing. And I would imagine, Shonali, you'd see this in the world of events as well. There's a lot of people who suddenly come out of the woodworks with all sorts of opinions about how you should do it better, and probably one of the hardest things, and it's something a lot of younger acts, I write with a lot of younger acts, and a lot of them will say, what advice have you got? And generally I will say it's very important to formulate your thoughts whilst also gathering as much information, while you're getting there. But you have to develop your, like the sound, your own voice, your own sort of sound. You have to start backing yourself. And even to the point where you might actually fail, even that failure will actually still point you in the right direction. So, it's a very difficult thing to do when everyone's telling you what to do.
Yeah, Shonali, can you speak to that? Yeah, please speak to that.
I can speak to that. I still have a million questions for Damien myself.
You guys might need to have your own little call afterwards.
I know, right? Well, because it's because the thing, as an event organizer, you always think about the process. You can't even walk into a hotel without going, why is the customer service doing that? So for me, I'm thinking about the process that you went through. And I think what people will do is they'll watch the show on Saturday night, whatever it is, and they'll probably have an idea that you've spent a week rehearsing whatever it is that you're doing on stage. But I mean, how long is the process start to end, and how much of your time do they have over that time? I think it'd be really enlightening for the audience to understand how much hard work it is.
It's full on hard work. It really and truly is. I mean, so when we were on the show, you would meet on a Monday morning and they would say, okay, this week the theme is whatever, folk song, for instance. What are you going to sing? And you go, oh, well, I'd love to sing this particular song. Then they would say, okay, have you got an arrangement? So you come up with an arrangement yourself, or they'd try and assign you an arrangement. So I always came up with my own arrangements. Then they would bombard you with, 6 days of media, constant media. We were, there's obviously a lot of people who are backing the show who need to get paid. There's, car companies and all these other things. So you're doing that while you're still trying to practice at the same time, and while you're consumed by, around that time, the chat rooms were a big thing. Right now, I suppose it would be TikTok, all that. But chat rooms were brutal around that time. So we were all getting annihilated on chat rooms. So emotions were all over the place in the midst of trying to look happy for media, trying to remember your song, and then turning up on the Sunday and performing it for the first time. And you haven't even performed it with the band yet. This is the first time you'll actually, you stand on the stage, the band have gone off and learned your arrangement. And this is the first time you'll hear it. And you've got a small little window where you get on the stage and this is your, say, 10 or 15 minutes to perform it, tweak anything that you need to tweak, and off you go. And then
that's live.
And then that's,
my
and then
God.
it's
My
live
throat
later
just
on.
clammed up.
Yeah, I didn't realise you
Lack
got
of
that little
rehearsal.
time with the band.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
It was the whole process is very quick, and that's why sometimes I watch these shows and I hate when I hear judges ridiculing someone for the choice of song or because they forgot a lyric or something like that. Because I just think, well, that's not realistic. People do forget lyrics. Famous people forget lyrics. And choice of song, it's the format of the show. You're actually giving them this format and then criticizing them when they don't meet your standard. So it's a difficult one. It is a difficult one.
Yeah, it's.
And I guess, and I really do want to speak to the theme that we were talking about before, but this is like the whole concept of reality TV is that, we set you up to fail so that we can create drama around the failure. And I think, unfortunately, that makes people more afraid to fail or more afraid to be their authentic selves sometimes. Like it's
Yes.
I remember one week they had a theme which was disco, and I am not a disco person. I'm a folk guy. That's my background. I'm a balladeer. I love ballads and I love that sort of stuff. And I was disco, and I was like, I'm going to get annihilated. And they kind of pointed me in a certain direction of this disco. And true to form, they said it was the worst thing ever seen on TV.
What song was it?
I did.
That's horrific.
Celebration by Kool and the Gang. It got annihilated, but of course it did.
You didn't want to do it.
I didn't want to do it. I was going to do my own version of it, but they said, no, that's not disco if you kind of interpret it this way. And but I remember getting annihilated, and it was actually a real turning point for me. And again, it's back to that idea of knowing yourself, or at least backing yourself. Because once that happened, I said, well, stuff the lot of you is, I don't care what you think. From here on, I'm doing songs that I want to do, and I'm going to do it in my style, and that's the end of it. And I went from there.
Imagine how soul crushing that would have been if you were 15 or 16 as well.
Yeah.
Like,
don't get me started about that. When I walked out, and it sounds like I'm on a bit of a soapbox, but when I walked out from my original audition, as a 30-year-old, the judges said that I was bog Irish and butt ugly.
It's not funny, but it's so funny.
I am serious. I am serious. That was said on TV.
On TV.
And, it hurt, it bothered me. But can you imagine a 16-year-old being told that? A poor, impressionable. That would be horrible.
And something I never loved on those shows, even though they were funny, was those early episodes where they did show the terrible singers in the auditions on purpose. And they were they were terrible, and they should never have been filmed. But those kids, a lot of them maybe were going for a laugh, but a lot of them in their head had ideas of success. And looking back on some of them now, I just feel a bit sick to my stomach on that being called entertainment at the time. But hey, quick change of pace, Shonali. Can we talk about health? People talking about your health and what you'd been through and how that affected your work and personal life.
Oh my goodness! So this actually brings us quite nicely on from the internal compass talk that we're talking about. Because I was reflecting, Damien, on what you were saying about taking those horrific comments at 30. I don't think I could have handled that at 30. The childhood I grew up in, it took me a long time to learn to express what I wanted and who I was. And I was still constantly looking to external validation. And so receiving external validation like that would have been crushing in my 20s, bearable in my 30s. But really, and this, Sam, I am coming around to your question, don't worry. I do this all the time. I do that lovely circuitous route back to wherever it is. But so it was sometime in my 40s when I was like, I really can't be back of house anymore. I really don't have the energy for this, to constantly service client need. And I need to desperately find what it is that I'm doing that isn't logistics management in events. And that was partly the break to the British Heart Foundation. And every job teaches you something. And at that point, I was doing a lot of leadership coaching because that was the flavour of management in British Heart Foundation at the time. So I said to Jim, look, I need to find what makes me tick, and can we reorganize our finances for, I thought it would be like, I'm like 3 months, no chance. It took about a year and a half to figure out where my real calling was, right? And I found it in March 2020. I finally decided I wanted to be a TV presenter, right? And we all know what happened in March 2020. The world shut down. I'm like, okay, right. So I've just found my purpose. I just decided I like what I see when I look in the mirror. And here we are, right? And then they did this thing in the UK where they closed all the doctor surgeries and all of the regular clinics so that they could cope with what they thought would be an onslaught of COVID patients. And I had actually had a lump in my breast, which I had noticed the September before lockdown. And, you know, you go to the GP and you don't want to hear you have cancer, right? So the GP and I had a really good discussion, and we were like, oh, you know, this happens in women. You know, sometimes you get these lumps, they rise, they fall. It could just be hormones. And despite my very strong family history, we both mutually decided, because that's what we both wanted to hear, that it probably was nothing. Wow. Anyway, that day, the doctor's surgery closed down. It actually started throbbing, like it really started hurting. And I'm like, oh God, this is something, you know, and I can't ignore it. So I phoned up the GP surgery and they said, well, you know, like, today we've cleared all of our appointments. So, I mean, you might as well come in because nothing's happening. Like, had it been a few days later, maybe they'd be inundated with like dealing with COVID. It literally, I feel like the luckiest person on the earth.
Okay, that's
lucky. It was that day. And so they said, come in. And the same thing happened with the breast clinic, because normally there's a 2-week referral. And honestly, I did feel incredibly lucky because there were people who had been going through cancer treatment who had to have their treatment stopped at that point and put on hold. But I was seen really quickly. So, I had a mastectomy within a few months, was told I had to go the chemotherapy, radiotherapy route. So 6 months of chemotherapy, then 3 weeks of radiotherapy, then opted to get rid of the other boob. You know, I mean, who wants to be uneven? You know, lose a nipple, lose them both. And then got rid of my, I make it sound brutal, got rid of it, elected to remove my uterus and ovaries at the same time, because my one surviving aunt had that done. And where my mum and the aunts that passed had got endometrial cancer as well. So yeah, here I am, still 5 years on, figuring it all out. I don't know if you saw, Sam, that Facebook post I put on Facebook the other day, but the recovery certainly from chemotherapy, I don't know if it's about cancer as a whole, but I did have a lot of positive comments from other people I know who've been through the whole journey, that, you know, even 5 years on, you're like figuring out who you are. And I just got to love who I was before it started. So I was like still trying to go back to that person. But this person is missing a lot of parts and some hair and you know, just is different, like completely different. And you know, it's that thing where time moves on. You've had an experience and it fundamentally changes you. And you've got to go through the grief cycle and accept that.
Yeah,
there's nothing else you can do about that.
Amazing story, and we're so glad that it sounds like you're very healthy now. You're
through it. Yes.
I am.
Yeah,
I am.
Was that potentially one of the upsides of COVID? Are you having that during a time when there wasn't events going on per se? Do you think?
It was, honestly, Sam, nobody wants to get cancer, but if you want to get cancer, you want to get it during COVID.
During a pandemic, in a way, yeah.
No FOMO whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
Every shielding, so you don't have any fear of catching some kind of infection from anything because your immune system is suppressed. You know, the entire world, the only thing I missed out on is that everybody who was on furlough and able to have a lovely time was all learning new stuff. And I'm just like, I'm a sponge. I'm like, I don't want to learn. To sit and recover. So that was the only thing I missed out on, but it was nice to not miss out on the thing that I love doing, which is the events world. And actually it spurred on my presenting career because I couldn't find answers to very weird questions that you have when you have cancer that the doctors just can't answer. Like, when you're being infused with chemotherapy, what does that physically feel like?
Oh, yeah.
Answer, spoiler alert, it feels like nothing. Like, I assumed it would feel cold, that I'd instantly feel sick. You know, they tell you to bring things to your appointment because of all this stuff's going to happen. They front load you with steroids 3 days before. They actually, when you go on a journey like this, they don't tell you the whole thing. And as an event organizer, that's really frustrating because you're like, you want to plan out, okay, this is what's happening. They tell you iteratively because each thing is a tiny trauma you have to get used to. I'm terrified of injections, and there's always a point halfway through the cycle where you have to inject yourself for 5 days.
Yeah.
So it's like, not with chemo, but like with something else to help your bones and stuff. So it's so they tell you that iteratively. I've forgotten the question, Sam. I've gone off on a tangent.
No, that was you answered it brilliantly. You answered it brilliantly.
I mean, even the thought that actually they don't tell you what to expect in the next stage. I mean, as an event organizer as well, you've no control whatsoever. I've a number of friends who are going through similar things, and and that's probably one of the biggest things. They have no control over whatsoever on any level. It's completely out of their hands. They're at the mercy of what people are saying to them, and they're just waiting for answers. And it's really hard, and it's really hard. It's a really tough one. And as you said, there's a grief process, and I totally and utterly understand that. It's everything being flipped on its head, and you're just being told to accept it, which is
and I remembered where I was going now.
Go on.
I started vlogging. To show people what it was like. So I started, and I shared the video the other day with somebody who was curious about it. Like when my hair started falling out, I did a video and goes, "Oh, this is what it looks like, right? It just literally comes off like this in your hand, and this is what it looks like." And because that's what you want to know. You want to know, what does this feel like? What does it look like? When will it happen to me? And you will go through a medical process where they give you medical leaflets, and an oncologist will tell you all sorts of things about contraindications and what you might feel, but nobody shows you what it looks like. So that inadvertently started my career. But that control thing's really interesting, because I think maybe I'm an eternal optimist. I like to not think I have Pollyanna syndrome, but I am an eternal optimist. But also I had gone through, in finding where I wanted to be, part of one of the most amazing things I ever did was take improv lessons sometime in my mid-30s, and that I did a little TEDx talk on improv and serendipity. But it's for me, that whole philosophy of, you're not in control of anything that happens. We're not in control of this conversation, and just having that mindset that enough in the moment. You got to trust the people that you're with to create genius with you. This is what Song Division's all about, right? And accept everything that they say as a gift, and yes, and it. And that's really where it was with everything. That mindset took me through so much. Growth.
Is it that letting go of control, I guess? And I want to sort of move on in a moment, but I wonder if they do that with the doctors to protect you, and B, because I imagine every case is different, because you just touched on that. I think a big misconception is that you get really sick from the chemo. But maybe they don't want to tell you that, because in your case, it sounds like that didn't happen. Not while it's
being infused. So you sit in the chair and you think that you're in the chair. It's afterwards. So they give you steroids so that you can deal with the onslaught of the chemicals, because the chemicals themselves don't just kill the cancer cells; they kill every cell. So you do go through a process of regeneration.
We could spend the whole episode on that. I want to talk about, so Shonali's husband, Damien, was last year or year before voted #1 Elvis impersonator in Europe. And so he's got his own, and he's coming on the podcast for sure. Loosely
you don't get that title without being extremely good. He must be
100%.
I have to say, and I might be biased, but he is extremely good.
He is. I've only seen him sing at a karaoke night, but his voice is gorgeous. And so you've seen the journey of being part of, like you said, driving across countries and Europe to shows and random gigs and things like that. The loose tie-in, Damien, is because I saw the show and I'm pretty obsessed with Roy Orbison. What was that? Or what was the thinking? How did that come about, deciding to do a show and an album, a Roy Orbison tribute? Tribute? Would you call it that, I guess?
I always love to say a celebration. Just
a celebration.
Tribute feels like because I can't really impersonate him. I'm not very good at it.
You're not trying to be.
Yeah, but I'm not. I'm just not really good at it, to be honest. To impersonate him, he had such a kind of a unique.
He's his own thing,
sound.
Isn't he?
Yeah, and very, very hard to copy. But You know what? When I was on Idol, I did Crying, and the public voted for it. I didn't choose it. The public voted for it, and I did it. And Barbara Orbison, Roy Orbison's wife, got in touch and said that she said that she liked the way, because I changed the ending of the song, and I did my own thing with it. This was around that time when I had decided, I'm going to follow my own path, and, I'll die by my own sword, that kind of vibe. And then 3 years later, I was at Sony, and I got a phone call again from Barbara Orbison saying they wanted to create an album to celebrate what would have been his 75th birthday, and would I like to record it? Yeah, it was the most incredible moment ever. The last thing I thought I was going to be doing, it came out of nowhere, and at the time my wife was pregnant with our daughter Kiki, well pregnant, and we just moved house, and then next thing I knew, I was on a plane over to Nashville and working with Barbara, Joe Melson, who wrote Crying and Blue Bayou, and all these sort of people. And it was incredible. It was an amazing experience, something I never look back on and kind of, look at it lightly, because it was what a gift. It was a really beautiful thing to be part of. And then it obviously opened up the world of Roy Orbison to me. The album did well, and I ended up touring, and I've since done it with an orchestra and all that sort of stuff. So it's and I love the songs. He was
amazing.
Okay, but you weren't necessarily a huge obsessed fan before. No. I love that. And I saw the show.
That.
Yeah, I feel like it was either State Theatre or maybe the Casino. I can't remember where you originally. It was great. It was awesome.
I think it might have been the State. That was where we originally came. I've done all sorts of different versions, but I love the songs. And Joe Melson, who, as I said, he wrote all those songs. I've been writing with him now for the last 14 years. He lives in Nashville. He's 91, I think.
Wow.
Now. We met 14 years ago, and we started this writing relationship via Skype or FaceTime. And again, that's a gift that I got as a result of that whole experience as well. Just getting to meet him. He's not only is he a lovely guy, and he's a genius. He's gifted, but I've learned so much from him as well. Just about life in general.
Cool.
He's been around.
Yeah. Oh, that is really cool. Okay, we need to wrap it up. I want to ask you both about this. We'll start with you, Shonali. Mentoring and supporting others, no matter what age they are, within the industry or personal, life. You do a lot with Fast Forward.
Fast Forward 15, yeah.
And have you done much with Elevate?
No, although Max and I are friends, and I love what he's doing. Elevate.
So tell us why. What drives that?
Oh my God! So it speaks exactly to what Damien was saying earlier, which is that when you have a lost something, you want to help others find that something, right? Well, I do, because I'm a person, right? So for me, having that, knowing what your internal compass is as early as you can, knowing your values, what you enjoy the most in life, and having the confidence and resilience to pursue it. If you could have that as early in your life as possible, imagine how brilliant the world would be, because you would constantly be bringing your best self to the world, right? So for the passion on this is helping people find that, or at least use tools that can help them find that they can use again and again and again to help. So Fast Forward 15 is 15 women within the events industry. It was started by Faye Sharp OBE.
Shout out to Faye.
Shout out to Faye, who's incredible, who, our industry is 70% women. But at the time that she started it 14 years ago, the leadership in women was lacking. And so what was it? It's a confidence gap, it's a skills gap, it's an understanding gap. What is it? She tried to mentor 15 women every year towards achieving a series of goals. She always calls it your big, hairy, audacious goal is something you have to work towards, but there might be little goals within that. And of course, you always find within that first 1 or 2 sessions of mentoring that the thing they think they want to do is perhaps slightly different based on their underlying motivations and what internal shift needs to happen for a person for them to get there. And so I mentored for a few years and then became mentor to the mentors because of everything I've done with kind of life coaching and breakthrough coaching. There's a lot of stuff in my arsenal that I'm able to help people with on pushing people forward. But for me, it really is exactly as Damon said, helping people find that tree, that internal part of you that goes, this is who I am, and therefore when the external feedback is getting too much, or when people are trying to pull me in a direction I don't want to go, I can at least find a place where I can come back to the center and go, well, this is who I am and this is what I enjoy. Therefore, this is my next step forward, because I'm not going to listen to that. Or maybe this opportunity will work, but maybe it won't, So yeah, that's really important to me. And I love, honestly, over this program, seeing the things these women achieve is absolutely incredible.
It is.
Incredible.
It's very inspiring. And you are super inspiring, and you're so generous with your time and care and advice. And, while you haven't mentored me, I learn a lot from you, and you're the first person to pull me aside sometimes to say, Sam, are you okay? You look a little bit under the weather, or you look a little bit like you've been burning the candle a little too hard at both ends. Damien, same question. I noticed something online about the Damien Leith Academy. I know you've written kids' books. I know you work with other songwriters. Tell us about all that and why you do it.
Yeah, look, mentoring is really important to me as well. I've worked with loads of young writers. I had a studio in Sydney, and it was always free for anyone who would want to come in and pick my brain or even work with me or do some songwriting. And it was purely because I saw a lot of people going through, landing in some of the terrible situation that I had got myself into. And I saw them kind of heading the same way, and I thought, oh gee, I gotta step in here and at least say something. Weirdly enough, though, as the years have gone on, I'm better at doing it now. So I'm 50 now. Before I used to constantly, tiptoe around the advice I was given, almost like, oh, I can't give them this advice because I don't want to step in the way of their dreams, or I don't want to be the person who's actually telling them to do something. I still want them to find their way. But I've discovered more and more now as I'm a bit older, it is important to actually be a little bit blunter without actually hurting people's feelings, but at least to really give them the advice that they really do need. And I really believe in certainly helping these younger acts out with the industry they're getting into. It's a hard industry, it's very, very difficult, and it can hurt a lot of people. So the more you know, the better you'll do in a nutshell, really.
Yeah, and also to have people like both of you who have a wealth of experience professionally and personally, people should be taking advice from you, as opposed to some mentors and life coaches out there that they haven't really gone through anything yet. So you're curious as to what they have to teach you. Okay, we've got to wrap it up. Quick, Shonali. Go.
Is that you can give all the advice, but actually always the best learning is from failure. So sometimes you say, look, this is where you're going, but they've got to make the mistake to really learn internally the message and hold that message and never do the thing again. So sometimes you just got to watch it happening in slow motion and then bring them back to the learnings, which is really, really hard. Go on, sorry, Sam.
That is the hardest, isn't it? Because you're watching it and you're going, oh no, I know where that's going, and it does go that way. But you're right. People do have to make the mistakes. Sometimes it's the only way it actually makes sense to them is by seeing it actually happen and go, okay, now I get it. Now I know I shouldn't do it. So,
and the mistake and the struggle is the bit that when you get to whatever it is you're trying to get to, or that happiness or success is the payoff. If that first bit didn't exist, then I don't think that as a musician you'd have the storytelling capability anyway to communicate what you've been through, whether that's lost love or rejection or whatever that is. To have all that served up to you on a platter, you're going to lack, I think, authenticity anyway. Speaking of authenticity, shameless plugs, my favourite part. Anything going on that either of you want to promote? Damien, what are you working on at the moment?
I've just written a musical, actually, which is...
as you do. As you do.
Unfortunately, I can't tell you what it is, but the exciting thing is it's over in London at the moment, which so it's been assessed now. It's always been a dream of mine, so that's probably the next major priority for me. I suppose all I can say is watch the space and
congratulations.
And
that's exciting.
Fingers crossed. It's
fingers
again
crossed.
Another long road.
Yeah, amazing. Well, good luck. That's super exciting. Shonali, what are you up to? How can people get in contact?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I'm chief executive of the Meetings Industry Association 3 days a week. And outside of that, I do coaching, I do public speaking, confidence workshops, and I do loads of emceeing, which is my favorite thing to do because I love elevating communications messages on behalf of other people. So I have a brand called Professionali. It's about the line between being professional and being authentic. And so you can find me at shonali.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Shonali Devereaux. Come and get in contact. I can
guarantee that anyone who requests or connects with you on LinkedIn will be happily accepted because you're so generous, like I said, of your time and energy. This has been an absolute joy. You're both just lovely human beings, and thank you again for your time. I've completely forgotten to share the story, but I will share it quickly because I want to dedicate this episode to my grandfather. But the whole reason we have this connection, and I found Damien's email came up in my inbox, was because I was walking to my grandparents' house in Leichhardt in Sydney. You had one idol, so it must have been maybe 2007, so I must have been 21, 22, and as I was getting closer, I saw my pop talking to someone in the street, as he did most days, just chatting randomly to people, and as I got closer, I was like, I think that's Damien Leith. That is Damien Leith. And he was chatting, and he said, Sam, come and meet Damien. He lives a few houses up the road. And I was like, I know who you are. And no offense to Damien, but I'm pretty sure afterwards I said, Pop, you know who that was, right? He had no idea. I was like, he's just won Australian Idol, and that was my pop. He didn't know who anyone was, and he worked on the cruise lines and was butler to people like Elizabeth Taylor and a lot of famous people back in the 60s, and they all loved him because he didn't know or care who anyone was. He just treated everyone like a human. So I begged him to get your email address at some point 20 years ago, and it came up in my inbox the other day when I was typing Damien in to email someone. It said Damien at whatever it was. And I was like, I wonder if he still got it. And I just emailed you and said, would you like to come on the podcast? And you said yes. Brilliant. And here we are. And shout out to Frank Rankin, my granddad, who passed away just 10 years ago now.
That's it, and a shout out to having conversations with people. It's a lovely thing to do. It's a lost art form. A lot of people don't want to do it, but I think it's a really important thing. You learn so much from it.
So important.
I agree, but you both are incredibly busy, and this is an hour, which is a long time to take out of your day. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. This is going to be up in a week or so. Until next time, stay safe, look after one another. Remember, life is better with music, and shout out to Song Division who power this podcast. Bye for now.
See ya.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You piece of shit.
Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Look, Mom, I'm failing. Hurry up and watch me fall.